Welcome back to our news bulletin. As the global death toll from the new coronavirus crosses 13,000, 1 billion people worldwide are confined to their homes. Nigeria and Rwanda have implemented a lockdown, while Pakistan has shut down all shopping malls and eateries after a spike in the infections. More details in this report.
The raging COVID-19 epidemic has forced lockdowns in 35 countries, including Australia, the US, and Europe. India has imposed a 14-hour-long curfew to limit the fast-spreading coronavirus epidemic in the country, while Cyprus, Gaza, Angola, Eritrea, and Uganda have recently joined the unfortunate club, reporting their first infections. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez warns the worst is yet to come.
Unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. There are still hard days ahead. We will still have to receive the impact of the hardest, most damaging wave, which will put all material and moral capacities to the limit, also our strength as a society.
But there appears to be hope, as China reported only one new domestically transmitted case of the COVID-19 after 3 consecutive days of no new cases. President Xi Jinping, after successfully bottling the pandemic at home, has called the leaders of France, Germany, Spain, and Serbia to offer support. The World Health Organization, too, sees China's containment of the outbreak a ray of hope for the rest of the world.
It's a message of hope. It's a message that this virus can be suppressed. We can break chains of transmission. It takes a huge effort. It takes an all-of-society effort. It takes coordination. It takes solidarity. It takes activated communities. It takes brave health workers. It takes supply chains that work. It takes commitment. So I think there's a message of hope there from China.
More than a third of Americans are in various phases of lockdown, with more states expected to ramp up restrictions. Meanwhile,
Iran has refused U.S. assistance to fight the new coronavirus, citing the unfounded theory that Washington made the virus. In a televised address, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Washington's medicine could be a way to spread the virus more. The Supreme Leader said America is itself facing a shortage, so it should treat its own patients first. Khamenei said therapists and doctors sent by the U.S. could be surveillance tactic. He said the Islamic Republic has the capability to overcome any kind of crisis, including coronavirus pandemic. Iran is the most affected country in the Middle East, with over 1,500 coronavirus deaths and 20,610 infected people. In India, thousands of city migrants are returning to their villages as their livelihoods collapse in the wake of the new coronavirus. This has raised fears the pandemic could spread to rural areas in one of the world's most densely populated countries. More in this report.
The number of coronavirus infections in India has crossed 290. 52 of these cases were detected in the western state of Maharashtra, where all shops and offices have been closed till the end of the month. This has caused a massive economic shock, hitting migrants from the rural areas the hardest. These people are now headed back to their family homes in droves, raising concerns about increasing the outbreak's spread.
The place where I used to work has been closed till March 31st, so that's why we are going to our homes.
There's already a crisis at railway stations where passengers have congregated in large numbers, turning them into a possible hotspots of infection.
We appeal to the people that they should not gather unnecessarily at station premises and ticket counters, and they should instead book tickets online. And they should not form a crowd at the stations by arriving before the scheduled departure of the trains.
The country's COVID-19 death toll stands at 5. But currently, India is only testing 90 people a day, an extraordinarily low number for the world's second most populous nation. Experts have warned the consequences of this approach could become horrifyingly apparent in the coming days. A country of 1.3 billion people with weak public health care in its rural areas is a disaster waiting to happen.
Moreover, in India, Protests continue against the Discriminatory Citizenship Act despite curfew and coronavirus threat. The Indian government has announced 14-hour-long curfew across the country today in a bid to curb the spread of COVID-19. Women at Shaheen Bagh in New Delhi have refused to enter in despite the government's ban on a gathering of over 50 people. Talking to media, the organizers said not more than 50 women are staging a protest at any given time. Meanwhile, protesters at Bhiwandi city in Maharashtra state have also announced not to end the sit-in. The organizers said there will not be a large gathering, but only 5 healthy women protesting at a time in Bhiwandi. Meanwhile, India's internet ban in occupied Kashmir has hit education as students failed to send admissions and take online classes. The valley has been reeling under curfew and clamped down for the last 231 days. Talking to media, students said they cannot apply for studies outside the valley because of internet issue. The students said many of them started online classes, but internet suspension on August 5th has halted these courses. They said in the name of national security, Indian government is ruining thousands of careers. The communications blackout has already hit the health sector of the valley after it reported its first coronavirus case. The doctors and health workers have asked the Indian government to end communications blackout to counter the epidemic. 2 prisoners and dead and 6 others are injured after fighting broke out in a Sri Lankan jail over coronavirus restrictions. Tensions erupted at the Anarudpara prison when guards tried to control the riot. Police said prisoners were complaining about the decision by authorities not to allow visitors as a move to contain the virus. They said in the commotion, guards opened fire to prevent inmates from fleeing and violence inside the jail. Sri Lanka has imposed a 3-day countrywide curfew since Friday as the number of cases has risen to 77. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims he is nearing a power-sharing deal with his centrist political rivals. But Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz swiftly denied the claim. In an interview, Netanyahu said under the agreement, former General Benny Gantz will replace him as the Prime Minister after 18 months. He said he wants to form a government to confront the coronavirus crisis and end the political deadlock in the country. In a tweet, Gantz said, anyone who wants unity does not impose ultimatums, hurt democracy or paralyze the parliament. Last week, Netanyahu bypassed parliament and enacted emergency regulations allowing security forces to use anti-terrorist cyber tracking of coronavirus patients. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on the warring parties in Libya to lay down arms amid the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, Guterres said Libyan rivals must accept the draft ceasefire agreement negotiated by the Joint Military Commissions in Geneva last month. The UN chief said Libya already has a dire humanitarian situation and the COVID-19 pandemic is spreading. Guterres urged the parties to join forces in addressing the threat and ensuring unhindered access of humanitarian aid throughout the country. Yesterday, Washington backed the UN-facilitated dialogue among warring sides for a lasting ceasefire. Nigeria's government forces have rescued 9 kidnapped people during recent raids on the gunmen hideouts in the country's northwest. The military says, based on information from military intelligence, the troops raided the hideouts in Zamfara state. It said 7 men and 2 women rescued from the town of Gando have been reunited with their families. Another 22 kidnapped people were also recently rescued from gunmen's hideouts in the neighboring states of Katsina, Kebbi, and Sokoto. Mexico says 1 person was killed as a Navy helicopter crashed in the country's southern state of Veracruz. The Mexican Secretariat of the Navy said 10 other officers were injured in the accident. Veracruz Governor Ciutane Jimenez said the helicopter was carrying 11 people. He said the copter was on a mission to rescue kidnapped people in the municipality of Zongolica in the south. Mexico's Minister of Civilian Protection, Hugo Gutierrez, says a rescue operation is underway at the crash site and the injured are being assisted. A 5.3 magnitude earthquake has shaken Croatia's capital city of Zagreb, killing a boy and causing widespread damage. GFZ German Research Center for Geosciences says the quake struck at a depth of 10 kilometers. Many buildings in Zagreb have cracked and walls and rooftops are damaged. Downtown streets are littered with debris as concrete slabs fell on cars and chimneys landed in front of entrances. The earthquake struck amid a partial lockdown of the capital because of the spread of the coronavirus. Bolivia has postponed presidential election and imposed a mandatory countrywide quarantine for 14 days amid COVID-19. Country's electoral authority says new election date will be decided together with the political parties and organizations. Bolivia has so far reported 19 cases of new coronavirus. Interim President Janine Áñez said quarantine measure begins today and extends until April 4th. Áñez said supermarkets, hospitals, banks and pharmacies will continue to operate as normal.
From Sunday, March 22nd at midnight and for 14 days, a total quarantine comes into effect throughout the whole country. It is a hard decision, but it's a necessary decision for everyone's well-being. From Sunday at midnight, we should be at home for 24 hours a day because we'll be safer at home. This is the best way to stop coronavirus.
Slovakia says it will ramp up efforts to fulfill its NATO obligations, but will not escalate tensions with Russia. In a statement, Defense Minister Jaroslav Nad says the stall in Slovak activity has been during the last 4 years is definitely over. Nad said the new Slovak government will take a reserve position towards Russia. He said, despite Russia's certain steps that cross the line of friendly relations, Slovakia will not escalate tensions. This comes after a four-party coalition government took office in Slovakia as an immediate policy change amid the coronavirus outbreak. The new government was approved by President Zuzana Captiva yesterday. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Several hundred passengers are still stranded aboard the Costa Luminosa cruise ship docked in Italy's Savona port city. Italy's local media says the first batch of tourists, primarily Italian nationals from nearby regions, has begun to disembark. The local media says 84 people are in isolation aboard the ship after several coronavirus cases were discovered on it. The Italian authorities say they are discussing the procedure of the evacuation of foreigners with relevant embassies. Another ship, Costa Victoria, is scheduled to arrive in Venice on 28th March. Authorities in Italy's Veneto region have already denied docking in Costa Victoria. Researchers in Hong Kong say recovered coronavirus patients can be left with damaged lungs. Infectious Diseases Center Director says lung function can decline by 20 to 30% in some patients after recovery. Researchers said computer tomography has shown fluid or debris-filled sacs in the lungs, which may get worse as illness develops. Earlier, in another study, scientists in Wuhan analyzed 140 lung scans of COVID-19 patients and found a ground glass opacity in both lungs of each patient. Lung fibrosis cannot be cured because the scar changes in the tissue do not regress. The demand for lemon, ginger and garlic in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa has risen significantly since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Details in this report.
Africa was slower to feel the impact of the coronavirus than Asia or Europe, but over 33 African nations have now reported more than 600 cases. Shoppers at the Atikelt Tira vegetable market in Addis Ababa can be seen filling their bags with lemons, ginger and garlic. The three ingredients are a component of the traditional drink dawa, meaning medicine, in Swahili.
This is naturally rich in vitamin C and full of natural herbs like lemon, ginger, garlic, honey and seasoning flavors. I often use it to recover from the flu, and by the same token, it will certainly help me fight corona as well.
This has led vendors to hike the prices since the outbreak of COVID-19. Sellers, however, say they are serving the public by providing produce needed for medical purposes.
You won't see a lemon seller as such now because they're being hunted and arrested, accused of hiking prices. But you shouldn't blame them because the wholesalers have increased the prices. We're trying to help the public because these are wanted for medical purposes. We didn't increase the prices too much, it's just a bit.
The virus had infected more than 300,000 people globally and killed over 13,000.
London-based startup OneWeb has launched another big batch of satellites from the space launching site in Kazakhstan. OneWeb CEO's rocket carried 34 more spacecraft into orbit in a build-up of the firm's broadband internet constellation. Its payload took the current size of the startup's constellation to 74 satellites. OneWeb CEO Adrian Steckel said since online activity has surged amid the COVID-19 outbreak, it is useful to speed up operations. The completed network aims to achieve an orbital configuration of approximately 650 satellites, with internet access being offered globally. OneWeb has so far raised £2.6 billion to fund its activities. Bright northern lights dance in the skies above Finland's northern Lapland region, putting the nature's best on display. Spring is one of the best times to see the northern lights, also known as the aurora borealis. This is because of augmented solar wind activity taking place in the Arctic Circle at that time of the year. Footage of the auroras was captured by the enthusiasts from Rovaniemi, the capital of Lapland. The city is also known as the official home of Santa Claus. Amazon says it will stop shipping non-essential products to consumers in Italy and France. The policy is an escalation in the e-commerce giant's response to preserve resources in regions hard hit by the coronavirus outbreak. An Amazon spokesman said the company made the decision due to a spike in orders and the need to respect anti-coronavirus safety measures in the workplaces. Amazon considers baby products, health and household items, beauty and personal care, groceries and pet supplies as essential products. The world's largest online retailer said merchants on Amazon are open to sell and ship directly to customers in the region. Earlier this week, Amazon announced it will only receive vital supplies at its US and European warehouses until April 5th to free up inventory space. It also announced a raise in overtime pay for workers in its US warehouses, doubling the pay after 40 hours for overtime till May 9th. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.